Look, the WNBA continues to get the kind of attention they shouldn't want. All right, again, Colin Cowherd is making a point to talk about the WNBA again. He does it now multiple times a week, but only when it comes to one player, or in this case, one player and what it is the rest of the league is doing to her.
Apparently, trading Caitlin Clark is now a legitimate discussion. And as soon as Indiana stopped freaking out, Colin Cowherd appears, adding fuel to the rumor fire as if it were his full-time occupation. The man has opinions, and this could lead to a basketball civil war. Is he exaggerating? Yes, but is he mistaken? That's where things start to get hot.
Caitlin Clark finished 9th in player voting. In fact, she finished behind one of her own teammates in player voting. The pettiness has no bounds. For years, the WNBA players were pointing fingers. They were saying people are sexist, we're not being promoted, we're underappreciated. And then they get the golden goose and they don't like what it looks like. When the wave hits, ride it. They wanted to fly private. They wanted to be more popular. They wanted sold out arenas. They got it. I wouldn't have guessed that Caitlin Clark would be this.
Once more, we are witnessing the WNBA develop new strategies for self-destruction as if it were a competitive sport. They seem to have moved on to plan plot twists, so forget about expanding the fan base or filling the rosters. And this time, the brilliant notion that's circulating, as if Caitlin Clark were a tradable Pokemon card, ship her out and call. As if that wouldn't ignite the league as a whole. No, not just Indiana. The entire enterprise would go up in flames, amid a magnificent blaze of anarchy and poor management.
This is clearly them cutting her down, because when you look at fan voting, obviously Clark is one, right? Because she has the most fans in the league. So that clearly biased. You go to the media voting.
She was 3.
She was 3. That actually makes sense.
I agree. She's not having the best of years this year. She's actually, her shooting is down.
Exactly.
There's been a number of situations that she's just not played her best ball. But she is still much, eons better than a lot of the other players that they voted in front of her.
Let's start with the obvious. Trading Caitlin Clark would destroy the league's one certainty in addition to ruining the fever. Cash cow. Clark isn't only dribbling a ball. This is about losing the plot, not a player. With her own hands, she is bringing a whole franchise and, let's face it, half of the WNBA back into the spotlight. Her fingerprints can be seen on every ticket sold, jersey produced, and headline scrawled. Over it.
A university professor in finance looked up the value of Caitlin Clark for the WNBA. This is insane. So this year, last season in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark was 26.5% of all economic activity as a rookie on the worst team in the league when she entered it. So now she has an 8-year, $128 million deal with Nike. So, she's going to eat. Merchandise in the league went up off a rookie from a Midwest-based school on the worst team in the league, 230.
Imagine now grabbing all that momentum and sending it out via FedEx. This is the kind of action that produces. Out of resentment, they start watching pickleball, toss their remote controls, and cancel season tickets. And then there's historically foolish. This would be the latter, with a dash of extras.
I'm not going to ignore, nor am I going to take my eyes off of what transpires with the WNBA over the next 2 weeks while Caitlin Clark is out with the quad strain. And the reason why is because, let me tell you something right now. I'm not going to go to word hate. I'm not going to be out there like RG3 was saying that Angel Reese hates Caitlin Clark or other players hate Caitlin Clark. But I will say this. I don't think it's specific about Caitlin Clark. I think it's what Caitlin Clark represents. See, it's no fault of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark ball. She balled at Iowa in college. She's balled since she's been in the NBA. She came into the league last year with no break whatsoever between the college game and the pro game and did her thing.
However, things are improving. In addition to exciting trade rumors that suggest the league has an abundance of talent to risk with. However, we also have the coaching equivalent of a soap opera narrative twist. The same coach who was conveniently recruited to watch Clark be poked in the eye like it was part of the halftime show. Be in charge of her. What comes next? Bring in the trainer who put them in charge of conditioning after icing her ankles. This is a setup, not a coaching match, and it's not even subtle. It's a well-planned performance dressed, covered in clipboards and lanyards, and the message is very clear. Dim the limelight, silence the star, and act. It's for the team, but we all see it. Clark was politically marginalized in addition to being benched. Additionally, the front office chose the coach, the one with an eerily identical record of passive-aggressive bench rotations and selective justice. Let's face it, Clark doesn't mesh well with this coach. Their basketball chemistry is like oil and a trash fire, to put it mildly. The system isn't designed around. It's intentionally rejecting her. This is a cold war in sneakers, not a battle of styles, and the consequences are evident every. While a random benchwarmer records minutes like it's charity work, she is pulled from the game.
Caitlin Clark had another, whatever you want to call it, confrontation in a WNBA game. Like, why is this happening? The Caitlin Clark phenomenon is one that I got wrong. I never really thought that Caitlin Clark would make the difference that she has in college basketball or in the WNBA. What other sports analogies are out there that are in any way similar to the impact that one individual has had on a larger sporting universe? Tiger was.
And why would a league that has finally captured the attention of viewers begin acting in this way? Easy. Control. Maintain just enough entertainment for the audience without giving them too much power. Control the story and the star. A player with real leverage is the last thing they want because it's risky, disruptive, and unbenchable. When you are unable to halt the momentum, what do? You employ someone who can. You put a courteous grin on the hit job and refer to it as player development, but the only things growing are a negative reputation and an angsty fan base with receipts. This coach was positioned, not just hired. If you sense a scheme, strong, it's because they're essentially slapping you in the face. Additionally, avoid being gaslighted by anyone. This isn't just rookie growth. Clark isn't experiencing a growth spurt. Don't fool yourself into believing that this is a typical rebuild timeframe. Like a toddler who ventured to paint beyond the lines, she is in timeout. Clearly, this has nothing to do with basketball. This is highly political, strategic, and personal. The worst part is that everyone is behaving like this coach, is merely being cautious, as if there were a big strategy. However, being cautious would entail deploying your greatest scorer, not covering up her skill with duct tape in the hopes that people won't notice.
She doesn't always get the consistent great star whistle. I think they're still kind of figuring out how to officiate her, right? Like when I've said this for years. When I covered Shaq and went to Shaq got fouled more than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, it was insane. People bounced off Shaq. Jokic complains constantly. Like, people are bouncing off me. She doesn't quite get as favorable a whistle as you think. So I think
neither does Steph too. That's the funny.
Fans, broadcasters, and Twitter all notice that this is sabotage with a whistle, not chess. The popcorn guy in row 5 notices it. What about the rest of the league? Yes, they would like sending Clark away as a sacrifice.
Lamb.
If she landed somewhere that didn't treat her like a radioactive material, can you picture the ticket surge? Liability. They would construct a statue for her by Thursday if you dropped her off in Vegas. If you sent her to New York, she would. Headline Times Square prior to practice. But under this rule, you might as well keep her in Indiana. Be keeping fireworks in a freezer. Everyone will be disappointed since nothing will blow up. However, the notion that trading her would benefit the club in some way persists. Who would benefit? The odds of the lottery? Confidence is protected by the backup point. the merchandise team, whose Clark jerseys are already 2 months behind schedule. Because, spoiler alert, Indiana isn't rebuilding without her. Instead, they're disappearing. Clark is the sole reason why. She explains why middle-aged WNBA highlights are being pulled from the editing bay by networks.
So we all know who Caitlin Clark is. She's the golden goose, laying those golden eggs for the WNBA to prosper. Well, a lot of times we notice that the WNBA is resisting this golden goose and resisting this bump and this force of nature, which is Caitlin Clark. So we're going to have to dive deep into that. What's behind that? Is jealousy, envy, pettiness, all the above, more than that? We're going to have to go.
However, benching her and employing her basketball rival would be excellent ways to stop that momentum. Would be the cherry on top of that nuclear cake. All you would need to do is make sure it looked professional. Numerous news conferences. There are many catchphrases like system fit and versatility. Keep the optics clear while the sabotage goes deep. It's really amazing how well thought out everything appears. It's as if someone in a suit sat down and said, "Let's hire the only person in. The league that might make Caitlin Clark appear interchangeable." Since that's the goal, break the excitement, flatten the curve, reinstate the previous hierarchy, and cause collateral damage if a few games are lost in the process. Therefore, let's not pretend that this is about rookie errors or patience. Rather, it's about power, which the league doesn't want. Focused on a single player. The front office doesn't want to own headlines and walk into press rooms. Power that poses a threat to the status quo with each step back and no look past three. The league could have welcomed. Instead of riding the wave and allowing the miracle to occur, they constructed a dam and employed a lifeguard to pretend there is no water behind it while holding a clipboard. Trading her wouldn't only be wrong, it would be a statement. A loud, fiery middle finger to fans, advancement, and the entire future of the league. And you know what? It turns out that when greatness is mismanaged, people would walk away rather than simply tune out. Similar to how uninteresting a clearance sale is.
So it's the last part of it, the players vote, that I take some exception to. And I'm not a big Caitlin Clark fan. Like, I don't care either way. But they vote her 9. And why I find that absolutely hilarious is you can say she's 9 if you want, but you don't treat her like she's 9. Because when she was here in town, they were picking her up 3/4 court the entire game. And they had her double teamed the entire game. Now, is your shooting efficiency going to go?
So feel free to continue benching her and defending it with ambiguous coach speak and rehashed platitudes about team building. However, don't be surprised if the ratings decline, the fans quit attending, or the star you attempted to. Don't blame the fans if Muzzle walks out the front door with her fan base in tow. Look at the front office, the coach with the grudge, and don't even blame Caitlin Clark or the media. And the league that allowed it all to occur, and congratulate you on your performance. Just when you thought